Good. Welcome to our media briefing. It's been a House day today. We've been addressing House bills in the Senate, and I think the House has been addressing Senate bills, or at least we hope, and that's the way the process works. Not a lot of controversy on the floor today. We've got our minority leader here, a majority leader, and our majority whip. We'll open it up for questions from the media, and I think we have questions from yesterday from those who are watching over the internet, who we welcome, and we welcome questions.
Can we start by talking about the response this morning from a couple of different organizations to the proposal that GOP leaders are working on that would include restoring the sales tax on food? A lot of concern being raised about that by a number of groups. 9 separate groups came up and talked about the different tax proposals, including that one, and then the Coalition of Religious Communities were here to protest specifically restoring the sales tax on food. They say even with a tax cut, it's going to hurt them. It's still regressive. It's not the way to bring in more revenues to the state or broaden the tax base for that matter. What do you say to those groups and their concerns?
Well, I just used 2009 as an example of how deep we had to cut in these social service programs that would otherwise have escaped less of a cut during that time, because we took the base out of the sales tax, which is the revenue for our general fund. And I think we have an obligation as legislators to provide, programs and a revenue stream to match the consistency of those programs. And you just don't have the consistency when you take the most stable base out of the revenue stream. It's purely the economics as well as providing these. If we're going to provide these social service programs, which they advocate for, then we have to have a revenue stream to fund them. And right now it is difficult, especially when you have ups and downs in the economy.
What about some kind of earned income credit or other refund for the lowest earning Utahns? It would mean a little less stability in that base, but it would also lessen the impact on those who are hurt the most. Earned
income credit it's over on the income tax side. That's not going to affect the sales tax base. That's going to affect our education funding. So in a year when, or in a time when we're struggling to find sufficient revenues for our education system, it'd be difficult for us to reduce income tax revenue, which goes for education. I think it's a consideration, and we had that on the table. We've considered it, but I just want to highlight that that's going to reduce education revenue.
But couldn't you adjust on the other end to make up that difference and take care of the neediest Utahns?
There's a lot of things we can do, yes. It's just, does it make good revenue policies? We're trying to match government revenues with government programs that need consistent and as little a volatile revenue stream as possible.
Would the minority leader like to weigh in there?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the question. When I take a look at, we've fought very, very hard up here over the number of years that I've been here to try to get sales tax off food. We're finally able to do it, though we didn't take all of the sales tax off food.
Right.
We just lowered it. It's a percentage of income that goes that way. And I have a real problem justifying the fact that we need to provide social programs that we want those on the lower end of the spectrum who receive those programs to pay for them. And I think that's basically what we're telling them is, if you want these programs, you're going to have to pay for them. And we all receive that sales tax off food, and so it's probably the first point that we see an increase in the sales tax, and that's how it's going to be. Even though you lower the upper area of it, I think the overall outcome is you see an income tax, or a sales tax increase, I should say, at the grocery store. You're going to see an increase there. If you buy a BMW or a Mercedes or something like that, you're going to be able to see that sales tax decrease immediately. That's my concern.
Yeah, and I think that I'm just gonna throw this out there. When I was in graduate school, Utah State University, my wife was working, and she was a graduate of Utah State also. We had our first child, and we were living from just on the edge, trying to make rent and put food on the table and deal and now have a child. And I think many of people out there are facing that today. And I remember as a accounting graduate student doing my own taxes, I thought I ought to be able to do that because that would be my future, filling out a form and paying income tax. We paid income tax. And while I was preparing those, I'd think, why do students have to pay any income tax? We shouldn't have to pay anything. And I mean, our car barely made it to school. Those were hard times, but enjoyable times. We worked hard. And today, when I prepare my children's taxes, they don't pay any tax and any income tax. And I think there's some difficulties in our society when everybody, I'm not saying they have to equally pay in, but everybody should be paying a little bit into the system. No matter what your income or what your situation is, everybody has to have buy-in and a little bit of skin in the game. Now again, it doesn't have to be equal, and it wasn't equal then, but I think we've gone down a road in this country, in this state, where we've taken people and we're trying to relieve them of any kind of responsibility to participate in funding our government. And everybody, I believe, should have a little bit of buy-in. And taking the sales tax back off of food, putting it back on completely, stabilizes that revenue stream, makes it much better for us to budget and deal with the challenges that are ahead, because we have food in the base. And in hard times, we all buy food, but we don't all buy furniture and automobiles and all that funds our general fund. So if we're going to be responsible and deal with our general fund issues, we've got to have a predictable, stable revenue stream. Now, I think we're open to some discussion on how we maybe relieve some of the other pressure, but back in 2007, when we did income tax reform, we took people completely off the income tax roll. They don't pay any kind of income tax because of just some of those pressures. So I just call upon everybody that they need to consider, if you want to have these kind of programs, we've got to have a predictable revenue, predictable, stable revenue stream, and so that these kind of safety net programs can be funded going forward. Otherwise, I think we'll have some struggle even funding them.
I've got the opportunity of having a lagoon in my Senate district, and probably the icon lagoon is the roller coaster. And property tax is like a freeway or maybe just a little incline on the road. It's consistent no matter what happens to the economy. You pay your property tax. It doesn't matter how much money is being generated by anyone in the economy. Property tax is stable, but sales tax is like that roller coaster. And when the economy is going well, it's like climbing up the front of that that roller coaster. But when the economy turns down, and it has a lot of the same feeling for a lot of us, you know, it's going over the edge, you go down the other side. And the steepness of the incline and the steepness of the decline is made a lot worse when you destabilize that. And with sales tax off of food, the climb up is significantly steeper and the decline down is significantly steeper the other side. And what the president's talking about is when it goes down steep, a lot of those social programs are laid to the side because we can't fund them. And I think we're very, very sensitive and trying to listen to the requests we've had. We just need to work together in a holistic solution to try to say, how do we make those ups less steep and the downs less steep and flatten that out and try to help people and do it in a fair way. So that's what we're about, and it's a great process, and hopefully we appreciate the public input from it.
What's the latest on where the tax proposal is, and as far as where, I mean, is the consideration still fully restoring the sales tax, or is there some in between we might be considering still?
We would consider all kinds of different, and have considered all kinds of different proposals, different levels. Right now, that the restoring of the sales tax is still the main part of this, broadening the base. And right now, we're working on the income tax side to see if there's something we can do there.
Do you know when that might be ready, or is it this week, or?
Yeah, it should be this. If it's not this week, we probably won't deal with this until next session.
But the plan is still to deal with this session, right?
If it's not done in the next 2 weeks, we are gonna deal with it.
Yeah, I mean,
That seems so logical.
we have to get something out and get going, by first part of next week, mid next week, to even have a chance to getting it through.
Have you talked to the Our Schools Now people about whether this will satisfy the concerns they have about coming up with a better source of funding for schools?
I have talked with them, and they are very favorable to broadening the bases, lowering the rates. They think that's good tax policy, or at least that's what they communicated to me. But it's not sufficient for them. They want increased revenue. Broadening the base does increase the revenue over time in the economy, but it isn't to the level that I think they feel like we need to expand the revenue streams. And I question whether our revenue streams are sufficient for the infrastructure needs that we have going forward. Not only are there social services programs, but you've got education infrastructure, higher education. We've got roads to build, we've got recreational assets to expand. We've got radios and communication devices to buy for our emergency crews throughout the state, trying to have a consistent system. That's gonna cost us over $100 million. We're building a prison, once in a century decision. Revenue streams are challenged at this time, and I think I think they raise a good question. Are those streams sufficient? I'm here to tell you, I don't think they are, but I don't think this legislature has to solve all the problems going forward. Like I said before in this meeting, the legislature 2 years ago, I think, took a very good step. We increased the gas tax 5 cents, and we raised $75 million through property taxes for our education system. And if every legislature would do that much or something that would help the system going forward, no one legislature has to enact a huge tax increase. It could be just little changes in structure. It could be a small increase in the rate here or in the rate there as those needs come up. And so I'm hoping that we can either this year or next year as a legislature, do our part for the future in making sure that there's a revenue stream for the infrastructure needs going forward and a doubling of the population.
So would that mean looking at raising income taxes in the future then? I mean, what do you mean by in?
Well, I think raising income taxes, my personal feeling is that's the wrong place to do it, because that's a tax on productivity. And when you tax something more, you get less of it. When you tax something less, you get more of it. And states all across the country are trying to lower their income taxes because of that, the nature of that. But, you know, I think if we're gonna fund the roads, those who use the roads have gotta pay for the roads. So I can see gas tax increases or some kind of a way of a user fee to pay for the roads. I think that's gonna need to be a big discussion going forward. And I tell you right now, our general fund is where our problem is. And what funds general fund is the sales tax. So the sales tax has gotta be modified in order for us to meet our general fund needs.
One of the things that I think was very, very smart that we did in some regards, and I've been an advocate for it, is that as we had additional needs, especially road needs, we determined that around 17% of our sales tax was auto-related. So we actually, instead of going out for user fee increases, gas tax or other fees, to pay for the roads, we actually tightened our belt and paid for them within our own revenue, so we didn't raise taxes. Before 1998, 100% of the new capacity and the maintenance of our roads was done out of the gas tax. And I think we've talked before that about $600 million right now is being spent on roads out of our general fund. You could argue that that's really smart because you've tightened your belt, you haven't raised taxes, you've tried to live within your means, but the gas tax lacks an inflationary element to it. And clearly, we've shifted from a user fee, a direct user fee, to an indirect user fee, even though it's related to auto sales. And that's probably one of the issues we need to look at, just to see how we handle that also. So this isn't a one-issue event, but it's caused us, I think, a very good, I believe will be a very good process to actually evaluate tax policy. And I don't know if any of us know the total outcome yet, but we're having great discussions. Sorry, Gene.
When we mandate, coming on that, when we mandate 20% of our general fund to go one place and one place only, takes it off the table for debate on where it may be needed elsewhere. And I think that's one of the areas we should be looking at, is moving money in that area. As I take a look at what's being proposed currently, I've heard there's right around $700 million that we're looking at tax exemptions or credits to be given this year. As we talk about raising it on food, we're taking sales tax, replacing sales tax onto food. And yet we're offering other exemptions that probably outpace even the amount of money that we would get from that. I think we have to be very, very cautious on where we're going and what we're giving, and broadening this base as we talk about it. We've got to make sure that we're broadening the base on those who can afford, not those who can't.
Do we know what we would expect to get if just with the food sales tax restoration? Do we know what that number is?
What's that?
With the food sales tax restoration, how much money that would be?
It's close to $200 million, but our proposal is to lower the rate at the same time, so it'd be revenue neutral. That's at least the proposal on the table right now. And there's variations to that.
Can we talk about the new directive coming from the Trump administration on transgender issues? There's a reversal of the president's executive order on letting schools let students use the restroom they find consistent with their gender identity. What's your reaction to that? What does it mean for the lawsuit the state is participating in against the order? Sorry, that's somebody else's question. I was reading it because I'm not really clear on that issue. So
I'm not sure what it means for the lawsuit. It probably diminishes the need for it, just off the cuff here. Personally, I support the reversal because I thought that, first of all, it was an executive order to begin with in the Obama administration. Congress didn't weigh in on that. And like I've said with the Bears Ears, we don't get the right kind of policy unless the Congress is the one involved in making those decisions. So now maybe with the reversal of that, then Congress now can get involved and decide what the policy ought to be with bathrooms in schools and with designations of federal lands and all kinds of other executive orders that I think have been problematic in the past. And then let's avoid executive orders and let there be a check and balance and have Congress and the president have to work together to make these things happen.
And yet we're not seeing that in the new administration, even though the president's the same party as both houses of Congress.
Yeah, I mean, the shoe's on the other foot for a lot of people. That a lot of the executive orders that were passed during the Obama administration, a lot of people like. It's probably the same people that hate the executive orders that are being done by the Trump administration. And so I call upon those people that are frustrated now to join with me, and let's petition Washington to stop executive orders only in very small administrative decisions. That was what the system was set up to do from the beginning, and how we got to this point where one person without any accountability other than facing the voters every 4 years, Congress has to be the one involved, that entity. It's the voice of the people, and they need to be involved in these decisions. And you get better policy when that happens.
I heard it was very, very interesting, I think, in that debate that I read about that was going on in DC in the White House, was the fact the Department of Education was very strongly opposed. The Department of Justice wanted to do it. It was a part of a campaign promise that ended up being the executive order, once again taking sides in making a decision on what's going forward. The one thing is we have to look at civil rights laws and other legal opinions that have been written on that area that give education the responsibility to give accommodation to children going to school. And it comes right down to accommodation. That's the whole issue.
So you want to see that the
Well,
policy set by the executive order continue, or?
I think all that the Obama executive order did at the time, the way I understood it to be, was it gave equality to children.
But you disenfranchise so much of the population when you have an executive order without the buy-in of the voice of the people.
What, President, what about that specific issue, though? You say you want Congress to act. What do you want to see Congress do on that issue? Do you want to see them enact a policy that accommodates these children who?
I'm going to let Congress make that decision or have that discussion. But that's what I support, is that the voice of the people is the one where that discussion should even begin.
But you don't have an opinion on what you want to see happen?
Well, I would probably, I don't know, because I don't know what the solutions are. But I think that, as I've watched processes work up here in the legislature, when you have to have 104 people weigh in on the issue, and you have to have half of them vote for your issue, you get better policy. And there may be a solution that works for everybody, or maybe everybody's not completely happy, but it's workable for everybody.
So we need to get to caucus.
Yeah.
I think there was some questions from our public that we needed to answer.
One question, it should be really quick, from yesterday. We can save today's for tomorrow.
Okay.
Our viewer yesterday wanted to know if you have formed an opinion on the border adjustment tax plan.
Have I formed an opinion? I have not. And that is a federal issue, I think constitutionally. National borders, defense, those are clearly a national issue and should be addressed by Congress. With the vote of the president at the end, you'd have to sign some kind of a bill, but I would hope that Congress is part of those decisions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, President.
See you tomorrow. Thank you for being here.
See you on the
Thank
4th.
you.
Yeah.